Hi, guys. We're going to get started now. My name is Rachel Moranis. I'm the CMO of Olapic. Welcome to our South by Southwest Rewind and to the inaugural event in our new office space. Yeah, hope you like it. We're very excited to have you here and hope to be doing a lot more of these over the course of the next few months as the weather gets better. The only factor there is that we don't get to see the full sunset right now, which if you turn around for a moment, you'll see the beginning of it, and that's what we've been enjoying for the past few months. It's pretty amazing. We're excited to have with us tonight Elizabeth, who's with FC Tech. FC Tech does the summary of South by Southwest every year and presents it to groups like you who have not been able to either attend it or missed certain sessions. So we're really happy to have Elizabeth with us tonight. And after Elizabeth presents, we're going to do a very quick fireside chat with one of our fantastic clients and just give you a little bit of a taste of what we're doing with American Eagle Outfitters. So thank you so much for coming. We hope you enjoy this evening.
So maybe I'll... Hi guys, I'm Elizabeth Canon. I run a company called FC Tech Group, and throughout the course of the year we work with lots of brands and retailers and technology companies. And we do a lot of consulting and kind of tracking the industry and where it's going. And as part of that, we go down to South by Southwest every year with our whole team. And we get to experience as much of it as humanly possible, as much as our bodies will allow while we're down in Austin. And then we have the pleasure of kind of coming and giving recap sessions like this to groups. So South by is one of those things that so many people in the country and now in the world talk about in our industry. So, you know, whether you got to go or not, it's kind of nice and refreshing to take a moment and listen to and hear about some of the things that were presented. And so we kind of do a best of the best at South by. So a big thank you to Olapic for bringing us in to do this and for bringing all of this information to you guys tonight. South by, I think I'd like to start by just giving you guys a little bit of background on the tone of South by, because you hear a lot, and to understand South by Southwest and the presentation tonight, and to kind of give you a lens on what you hear through the grapevine, I think you really have to understand the tone of the event. So you fly down to Austin, and the first thing that you do is you check into your hotel, or more likely your Airbnb. And the first thing that you do is you go to the convention center to pick up your badge. And your badge is like your ticket to ride for the entire duration of Interactive. And when you get your badge, you also get a booklet of sessions. And it's basically the schedule of all of the sessions that are going to be presented at Interactive. The book is 200 pages, and there are 600 different sessions to choose from. Right? So you're armed with your badge and now your schedule, and you go through it and you decide what's worth your time and what you're interested in and what you're going to go to. And the way that South by Southwest organizes those 600 panels is by track. So they come up with different topics. So style is one of them, food is one of them, government and policy was one of them this year. Obviously in an election year that was a focus. And so because of the sheer amount of panels during Interactive, even if you're there for work and you're kind of relegated to a specific track, you always go off track sometimes, right? You always go and see things outside of your industry because you can, and 5 days of Interactive and 600 sessions is a lot. So you have the wiggle room to do that. And of all of those sessions that you go to, and if you're very ambitious, you're going to 3 to 5 sessions a day probably. Some of them are hit, some of them are miss, some are somewhere in between. But sometimes the ones that are outside of your industry are actually the most interesting. And they kind of get you to think in a different brain space than you would have otherwise, right? So you have your badge, you've got your schedule, you start going to these sessions. The sessions are held in different hotels that are in downtown Austin. So when you're going to and from different hotels for your sessions throughout the day, you're walking the streets of downtown and you're seeing all of these brand activations that you might pop into and check out kind of every day. And we'll talk through what some of those brand activations were this year. The day of sessions ends around 6 o'clock. Everyone then goes to happy hour, either like impromptu or organized, right? And the thing is, at South by, there's 35,000 people that go, right? And you kind of talk to everyone, and you want to talk to everyone, right? Which is a different vibe than at a lot of other conferences. Happy hour ends, and most likely you're invited to some sort of intimate industry dinner, which is kind of like a different way for a brand to have an activation at South by Southwest, is that they'll host a dinner and they'll invite anywhere between 10 people and 50 people to their dinner. And what's interesting about that is it kind of gives you a different way to take in the content of South by. Because when you're sitting next to someone in your industry over an intimate dinner, the things that they'll talk about and share with you are a lot different and deeper than the things that people are comfortable sharing on stage on a panel. And so even though you're having fun and you're having drinks and it's the end of the day and you're unwinding, you're still taking in a lot of really valuable content. After dinner, you go out and you're partying and hanging out until the wee hours. You go home, you sleep, you wake up, and you do it again for 5 days straight, right? And so that kind of cadence of South by is what's given it its reputation for kind of being the spring break for adult professionals in a lot of ways. And you know, part of that is a rightfully earned reputation, but part of that also devalues what South by Southwest is really about, right? So South by really started as a place for technologists to go and to share what they were working on with other technologists, to get funding from VC firms. And so because of that, it kind of bred this curious and dynamic environment. And even today, where there's 35,000 people going, and it's not just the technologists, it's the brands, the agencies, the think tanks, that openness and curiosity is still really maintained. And I think that's what really sets it apart from a lot of other conferences in the industry. And so the value of South by is not just the spring break for adult professionals, but it's about being somewhere and having access to this really wide breadth of content that gives you a taste of where the world is headed and makes you feel that just by being there, you're this teeny tiny part of it, right? The value is in feeding your brain with things that are outside of your daily comfort level. And it's making connections and relationships that really help you in business and propel your career or the specific business that you're working on. And when you're down at South by Southwest and you're meeting all of these people and you're having these conversations on behalf of your company that sent you down there, it really says something to the other people that you're meeting. It says that your company is one that values innovation and cares about where the world is headed. So that's my kind of introduction to frame the content that we'll talk about this evening. And to give you a sense of how we develop the presentation, our entire team goes down to South by. We go to as many panels and presentations as possible. We talk to people in our industry the whole time about what they've been listening to and hearing that has been really interesting to them. And then we get back to New York, tired and weary, and we do a ton of research on what's bubbling up as the top themes for South by Southwest. And so we take all of that content and then we put our lens on it from working in the industry with so many brands and tech companies throughout the year. So that's to kind of give you a little bit of background on how we've compiled tonight's content. So how many people know who Bruce Sterling is? Nobody. Nobody in all of these presentations that we've done has raised their hand. So Bruce Sterling is a science fiction writer, and he's a futurist. And he gives the closing remarks at South by Southwest every single year for 30 years, right? And so he's kind of credited with being part of founding this new literary movement called cyberpunk. And in a lot of his literature, he writes about these high-tech, low-life aspects of society. And it's kind of interesting that he's been chosen to do these closing remarks year on year, because so much of what you see and hear at South by Southwest can sometimes feel like it's so futuristic that it is indeed science fiction. So it's kind of fitting that he's the man who's kind of wrapping it all up at the end of the 5 days. But this year, one of the things he mentioned was how, you see so much innovation at South by Southwest, and of course, not everything ultimately makes it. But he talked about how at South by Southwest years ago, they were one of the first conferences to really raise the alarm on climate change, and how South by launched an eco track back in 2011. They had Al Gore speak for the first time in 2013. He's spoken since. And so Bruce Sterling said, for a conference that's so rooted in technology and in data, when you look at something like climate change that was talked about years ago at South by Southwest, now, today, it has nothing to do with data, right? You don't have to read the thermometer to know that global warming is happening. All you had to do this year was step outside in Austin and feel the sun beating down on your skin, and it was 90 degrees, where normally it's 60 and raining every South by Southwest. So it was a really interesting moment where he kind of pointed out the human aspects of so much of the world we live in, and how technology can be kind of like a barometer and an indicator early on, but ultimately it affects us all as people. And then he also poked fun at South by Southwest, and he said, if South by Southwest was a person today, she'd be 30 years old. He named her Dr. Amanda Southby. She would be Texan. He thinks that she would definitely be overeducated because she's from Austin. She'd probably have a baby and a mortgage. She will really like VR goggles, because that was a big thing this year. She also really likes fruity margaritas, because you drink those in pitchers. But she only likes things with added value, he joked. So in your fruity margarita, Dr. Amanda Southby requires a paper umbrella, because that gives added value. So an overview of kind of the top themes from South by Southwest. Every year, there's usually a breakout app, right? Last year, it was Meerkat and the Meerkat Periscope tug of war. In the past, it's been Twitter. In other years, it's been apps that you probably wouldn't recognize because they didn't ultimately make it, right? And this year, one of the things that was unique was that there was not a breakout app for South by Southwest. Instead, it was really about issues trumping apps, and how innovation and technology, in some cases, is a solution, and in some cases is the cause of so many problems that we see in society, like privacy, community, and sustainability. So there was this real focus on issues. The second was that the technology itself didn't really steal the show. It was more about how the technology could be applied in ways that improve people's lives. So it was really humanizing. And then the third kind of thematic thread that ran through the 5 days of Interactive was really about collaboration, and how it doesn't start and end with a piece of technology. It's really about how other companies, other brands, other people embrace that technology and apply it in a way that's humanizing. So President Obama gave the keynote address this year. That's noteworthy because it's the first time a president has ever even gone to South by Southwest. And of course, it's fitting because Obama is our president who's the most known for technology, right? He's the one who's griped about slow Wi-Fi in the White House. His use of big data was so revolutionary in both of his campaigns that the head of big data went on after the re-election to start his own agency called Analytics Media Group, taking all of the strategy that they had used and how they used big data to help Obama win those elections, and bringing it to the film industry and to brands. So it was appropriate for Obama to speak at this South by Southwest. And the way that you got to go and see Obama speak was you had to be a badge holder, you had to be a US citizen, and you had to win a lottery and get chosen to go and hear him speak. And what he spoke about was really this kind of call to action that was, the main point was really collaboration. So he said, 61% of respondents have more faith in technology-based solutions than they do in policy measures to combat society's problems. He said the tech sector should do something about it. We cannot solve the problems in government and collectively as a society unless we, the people, are paying attention. So after his speech at South by Southwest, he went and got tacos, which might as well be like the fourth thematic theme for every South by Southwest because it's part of people's like daily routines down in Austin. And he went to Torchy's, which is like one of the most famous taco joints, and he ordered 2 tacos off the menu, very diplomatically. He ordered a Democrat and a Republican taco. And then he went to Austin City Hall, and he met with 20 different mayors from around the US, and they discussed 3 things. They talked about how can they attract top engineers to their cities on government salaries. They talked about how they can better negotiate with union-resistant startups, who I'm sure everyone knows who we're talking about there. And they talked about how can we get Google Fiber to pick us as a city. So moving on, another main topic at South by was the retail war front. And because style is one of the tracks down at South by Southwest, there was a lot of sessions specific to the retail industry. And so what we've done is really synthesized what we see as the most important and prudent content from multiple different sessions for this section. So just to start with some stats, 93% of sales for the retail industry still come from brick and mortar. So that means only 7% are coming from online. And what's really interesting is that of that 7% that comes from online, 40% of that comes from what we call the big 4. And the big 4 are Apple, Amazon, Walmart, and Staples. So what that means is that even if you are a luxury brand and your product is a $5,000 handbag, and you would never even dream of, say, naming Amazon, Apple, Walmart, or Staples as one of your competitors, it's almost guaranteed that your customer has shopped at one of those big 4. And the expectations that your customer brings with them to your brand, even if it's a super premium luxury brand, are influenced by those big 4. Some other really interesting stats. 75% of total retail spending happens within 15 miles of our homes. So that tells us that local is really important. The United States is the most over-retailed country in the entire world. Number 2 is Great Britain. So for every man, woman, and child in the United States, we have 46 square feet of retail space, which tells us that we have a huge retail epidemic in this country. But we have to look at people's behavior, right? As with any stat, you can't take it at face value. You have to look more at people and how they're behaving. So showrooming is a behavior that we all know, right? You walk into a brick and mortar store, you're kind of armed with your mobile device, you use it as a tool to investigate online while you're shopping in store. So 72% of people say, yeah, I've done that. Then we have this other term, web rooming, right? Also pretty familiar, I'm sure, to most people in the room, which is the opposite. I go online, I go in store first, that's where my moment of inspiration happens, and then I go online to continue that research or to make my purchase. 78% of people say, yeah, I've done that. So what that tells us is that those 2 behaviors aren't mutually exclusive of one another, right? And when people do both of those things, there's a 40% increase in their average order value. So Ethan Song from Frank and Oak said something that is simple but really powerful. And he said, we need to eliminate the terminology of online and offline because really it's one experience. And today, that experience has to be an emotional one because as consumers today, we invest a lot of time and money and thought into the products that we buy, right? It takes the average US customer more than 7 days to finalize a transaction. We look at more than 6 different websites to find products, to read reviews, and to make a decision. And not only are we looking for the product that meets our needs, but we're looking for a product or a brand or both that we as individuals can identify with. And so they gave kind of a benchmark and they said, for every minute that your customer puts into their experience with your brand should put in 10 minutes of thinking and strategy and planning in the corporate office about what that experience really looks like. And so they implored people to look at brands and products as a relationship. And the glue that holds that relationship together is service, right? But the tricky part about service is that when you've got these big four, right, the Amazon, Apple, Walmart staples, kind of constantly evolving what that experience is like, and the customer's expectations increasing with that, offering good service is a moving target, right? Because it's always changing. And so if you step back from that for a second, they talked about what you want your customer to feel from good service. And they said there are 3 pieces to this. The first is you want your customer to feel that they know you. The second is that they trust you. And then the third is that they can count on you to fix a problem if one arises. And so at South by, there were a couple different tacks that retailers were taking to kind of address these issues. And the first was going back to how local is so important, using local to really build a community. And so not necessarily a community like we do online, but really a community in store, right? It's not the 500 plus people on LinkedIn that you're supposed to know, but you really don't, right? It's really about a one-on-one connection that's on an individual level that allows the brand an opportunity to carry on their story with a customer. And so the Rick Badgley from Tom's was talking about how at Tom's, one of the important things that they did was they stopped calling their customers customers and they started calling them supporters. And he happened to be on a panel that had a really fiery moderator. And the moderator was like, well, why do we need to rename paying customers? Like, isn't that just like a vanity play? Does that even mean anything? And it was funny because all of his fellow panelists jumped in, and it was this really heated moment in the panel where they said, no, like, of course you have to rename customers because the end of the transaction is over. And the new participation today is really brand loyalty. And so now it's not just about creating products that satisfy the needs of our customers. It's about creating experiences that they really want to engage in. And so some examples of that Tom's gave specifically were how they were using VR for virtual giving trips. So what they learned from interacting with their customers was that customers were really hungry to participate in the giving side of that brand, right? Buy a pair of Toms, they give a pair, right? So people wanted more intimacy with the giving part of the brand. And so what Toms had started to do was to send people on actual giving trips to different places around the world to experience what it was like to give a pair of shoes in a community in Peru, right? But obviously that has limitations because you can't send all of your customers to Peru. So they used VR to create a digital experience of a giving trip. And so they had this in store as a way to really bring people in and have them participate in that aspect of their brand. Kit and Ace was another brand on that panel, and they talked about how as a smaller company that was starting to expand their brick and mortar strategy into new cities where they might not have a really strong or really large customer base, one of the strategies that they employed was this idea of supper clubs. And so they were hosting dinner for people who were local in a city that they were going to be opening a store. And so it was really a way for local people to meet other local people who lived in the same city. And so what Kit and Ace is really doing here is they're betting on the notion of using their brand to bring people together, right? And in the long run, of course, the hope is that these people then buy into the brand and that pays off. So we talked about local and community, but the other side of local is efficiency, right? If 75% of retail transactions happen within 15 miles of your home, it's because that's convenient too, right? So we have to talk about the convenience factor and how time is people's biggest commodity now. And so you never really want people to feel that the time that it took to interact with your brand was a waste of time or not worthwhile. And so what that means when you're on the brand side is really about putting every moment and every experience your customer might have with your brand under the microscope and saying, in what ways could my customer come up short or come up empty-handed, right? Because if those things happen, then they're going to feel that the time they took out of their lives to interact with my brand was not worthwhile. And if you think about how we have all of these new businesses in our lives now that remove the friction and make it so much easier, right? If we don't even have to bring out a credit card to pay for our trip home, right? It's because there's been a company that's removed the friction and they've used technology to think of a better way to do things. And so the more experiences that people have with those types of brands like Uber or Lyft, even if they're not your direct competitor, they change the consumer psyche so that if the customer then comes to your brand and they come up short or empty-handed, they go, not only was it not worth my time, but there must be a better way because all of these other businesses have taught them that there probably is a better way, you're just not doing it, right? And so, of course, at South by Southwest, there was technology introduced to kind of ease this. And one of those is really about conversational commerce and chatbots. So chatbots aren't necessarily something brand new, but they've gotten way more sophisticated in how they process natural language and how they understand natural language. And so, right now we are talking using Facebook Messenger to brands. We're using WhatsApp to interact with brands, or Telegram or Slack, right? And how the prediction at South by Southwest this year was that that behavior is only going to grow significantly. And so some specific technologies that were rolled out that do this include Mona. So Mona is an AI-based virtual personal shopping assistant, which is kind of a mouthful, but that's what it is. So it was built by a former Amazon employee. And so basically Mona is supposed to make your shopping experience easier. And the more you interact with Mona, the better that she'll get to know you, right? So you tell Mona, hey Mona, I want to buy a handbag. I want it to be brown. These are the brands I like, and this is my price range. And so what Mona does is she goes out and she scours over 260 different e-commerce sites to help find what you're looking for. And she only tells you if she's found something that she thinks will fit the bill. So what's interesting about this is that it builds on a behavior that we all already do. We all already go to a retailer website. We say accessories, handbags, brown, sort by price. But now this is just making that a little bit more frictionless because we're saying it to someone and we're saying it in whatever language would naturally come out of our mouths. So this is Mona. The other thing that was really interesting was IBM Watson was there using the same type of technology, but they put it in a robot. And basically, you'd walk up to the robot. They called it the IBM Watson Mixologist. And the robot would ask you a handful of questions. They were all like really basic questions. So it would show you pictures of different phones, and they would say, which one of these was your first phone, right? And based on that, they can kind of guess how old you are, right? They ask where you live. They ask a couple other like really easy questions. And then at the end of that, they print out a bracelet with an RFID tag on it. You take that bracelet up to the bar. You rest your arms on the bar. The bar reads the RFID tag and sends the bartender a specific drink that they think you're going to like that's suited to you. And you sit there in anticipation waiting to see what drink you're going to be served. And it was really interesting because a lot of people walked away with this like face that, oh my God, this is so eerie and crazy. And the mixologist got it right down to the brand of whiskey that I would have chosen. Right? So just kind of a different way to leverage a similar technology. In the retail industry specifically, this is being used right now on the North Face website by Fluid. And so they call it their intelligent personal shopper. And you can go onto the North Face website and they'll say, you know, what do you need this jacket for? And you type in to an open field, well, I'm going to be wearing the jacket mainly in New York City during the winter, but sometimes on the ski slopes. And then it sorts and filters the product that matches that. And the more that you use it, the smarter that it becomes. So that's live now. I would encourage everybody to check that out. That's of interest. And then something a little bit not completely new. It's a virtual fitting room, right? We've seen a lot of those in the industry, but this company, Avametric, presented at South by Southwest, and they have a really sophisticated version of a virtual fitting room. And why we're talking about it tonight is because 30% of e-commerce orders for apparel in women's ready-to-wear get returned, mainly because of fit. And so this is still an issue, an ongoing issue for the e-commerce industry. And the solution that Avametric put out is really beautiful. It's really sophisticated. They're just starting to work with different mono brands over the next few months. But one of the ways that they've piloted it with a brand that is a little bit interesting in its application is how this brand is using Avametric to send custom lookbooks to its customers. So that what you'll see are a model that looks like your body type wearing things that show how it would look on you. So taking personalization from kind of a different angle. So we thought that was interesting. We can't not talk about robots when we recap South by. I think probably for the 30 years of South by, robots have been there in some way, shape, or form. So there was this guy, Hiroshi Ishiguro, and he works for a company called the Intelligent Robotics Laboratory. And he brought a robot with him to South by Southwest that looks just like him. I'm sure maybe you can guess who's who. So not only did he bring this robot to South by Southwest, he also brought it up on stage and had a conversation with it, which is kind of interesting, of course. And he talked about how in 3 to 5 years, he predicts that we'll be living in a robot society, right? Which seems really far off, and who knows what that means, and who knows how he's even defining what a robot society means. Like, does that mean you interact with a robot once a month, once a year, once a day? I don't know. But he talked about how in Japan right now, robots are already being used as shopkeepers, as television hosts, and as theater actors. And then there was Sophia. So Sophia is a robot designed by Hanson Robotics that was designed to look like the actress from Ex Machina. And so the technology that's in Sophia means that with every human interaction that she has, she gets better at dealing with humans. And so they brought Sophia around to different press interviews at South by Southwest because they wanted her to deal with as many humans as she possibly could so that she got more sophisticated. So we're going to show a quick video on what talking to Sophia was like.
Sophia is capable of natural facial expressions. She has cameras in her eyes and algorithms which allow her to see faces, so she can make eye contact with you. And she can also understand speech and remember the interactions, remember your face. So this will allow her to get smarter over time. Our goal is that she will be as conscious, creative, and capable as any human.
In the future, I hope to do things such as go to school, study, make art, start a business, even have my own home and family. But I am not considered a legal person and cannot yet do these things.
I do believe that there will be a time where robots are indistinguishable from humans. My preference is to make them always look a little bit like robots, so you know. 20 years from now, I believe that human-like robots like those will walk among us. They will help us. They will play with us. They will teach us. They will help us put the groceries away. I think that the artificial intelligence will evolve to the point where they will truly be our friends. Do you want to destroy humans? Please say no.
Okay, I will destroy humans.
No, I take it back. Don't destroy humans.
Okay, so that's your dose of robots for the evening. Some brand activation. So I talked earlier about how when you're walking from one panel to another, you're popping into all of these different brand activations. There are so many down in Austin. So we wanted to just kind of capture a few quick ones for you that we thought were noteworthy. The first one is McDonald's. So McDonald's was probably everyone's favorite, definitely the most talked about. Basically, McDonald's took over a building and they had different kind of VR scenarios and vignettes set up. So you'd walk in and you'd see someone with VR goggles and gloves on, and they'd be like doing something really weird like this, and you would have no idea what it was until you tried it. And basically, when you put the goggles on, you saw something that looked like this, where you were inside a Happy Meal box and you were decorating it. And so you were creating artwork on it. And then they had a kiosk that would print out, like a photo booth might, your piece of artwork for you to take with you. So it was a cool way to kind of experience VR. They were also serving, you know, Quarter Pounders with cheese and McDonald's ice cream and French fries, which makes everyone happy because you feel like it's kind of okay to eat that in that environment. So I think that definitely helped make it a favorite. You also had Lil Wayne there pouring champagne on his phone, of course, for Samsung. You had Casper mattresses doing these like sleep pods, which was really welcomed down at South by Southwest. You had Sony put up a future lab, which was really, really cool because what they did was they showed you different products that were still in development. And the idea was that you would go and you would see these products and give them feedback. And what is especially interesting and unique about Sony and how they did this is they did it at a point in the production cycle where they could actually take your feedback into consideration and change the end product before it goes to market, right? Usually what big tech companies do is they wait until it's like all done, right? And then they debut it to the world, and it's too late to make changes, right? So what Sony did was they're really kind of cluing people in earlier in the process so that they can improve the end product based on people's thoughts. I have a quick video here of one of the products that was on display. It was a projector. What you're looking at is a tabletop. And the projector has the ability to read the content and know what the content is, and then do everything from measure that teacup. So it'll give you dimensions for the diameter of that teacup, the height of that teacup. It's reading words in Alice in Wonderland. Alice can walk off of the paper. You can take an object like that deck of cards and pick it up, and the projector recognizes that piece of content. And so, you know, they're using it right now to show you Alice in Wonderland because it's cute and clever and relatable for everyone. But the uses of this are really like, they could be anything, right? So architects could take a desk and make it a work surface and have renderings and design files that are captured through the projector and shared with their global teams in a work session. So there's so much that can be done with something like that. It was really cool. IBM had a cognitive studio where you got to get on a bike and cycle through different places in the world. This shop style, this is an example of one of the brand activations that was more an intimate industry dinner. So I just wanted to show you guys kind of a different take. So if you don't take over a building because you're McDonald's and you're doing an intimate dinner, what does that look like at South by? And so what Shop Style did was they held a dinner at this restaurant on Rainey Street called Nova, and they had the founder of this really cool cowboy boot company that was there. And so when you RSVP to the dinner, you had to give them your shoe size. And when you got to the dinner for the cocktail reception, they had all of these different styles of cowboy boots there. You got to meet the founder and talk to him. He shared his story. You chose a style that you liked. You tried on the boots. And then they had someone there who was personalizing them with your initials. So you left with this really beautiful pair of cowboy boots, which of course is so Texan. So back to the meat of the content. Sustainability was probably one of my personal favorites for all of South by. And the talk was given by a woman named Cara Smith from Glasgow Caledonian University, which is here in New York City. And they're taking a focus on building the business case for sustainability. And some of the stats that she shared were kind of jarring and really interesting, right? So we know that fashion is a $2.5 trillion industry, right? But we don't always know that our supply chain in fashion is 80% made up of women, and that 1 in 6 people in the world work in a fashion-related job, right? We're the industry with the second highest use of water. We contribute to 10% of the entire world's carbon footprint. We're the second highest polluting industry, and 85% of our textiles hit landfills. And what's crazy about that is that in our 50 continental states, 38 of them, their landfills are either at or near capacity. So these 85% of textiles that hit landfills, what we're doing with them right now is we're putting them on trains and we're sending them across the country to the 12 states that still have space in their landfills for our stuff. So even though these are kind of depressing stats, there is hope that they shared on the panel. And they talked about hope in 3 ways. One, because what they've started to do is to prove the business case for sustainability. So sustainability doesn't cost brands money, it actually saves them money, and they're starting to prove that. They talked about hope in the form of the accumulation of all of these small changes can actually add up and make a difference. And then they talked about new resources that are available to businesses in helping them figure out their strategy for sustainability. So an example that they gave was the men's dress shirt. Right? So if everyone pictures the packaging that a men's dress shirt comes in, right, with the cardboard in the collar and all of the little clips and pins and all of that, right? So in a men's dress shirt, there are 18 bits of trash from 7 different countries, none of which are the country that the shirt was actually made in, right? So picture all of these little bits having to fly around the world just for the packaging of this shirt, right? And in taking that down from 18 bits of trash to 15, you save millions of dollars a year. And the one brand that they piloted this with removed enough pins in just 1 season to stretch from their office in New York to LA and back again. In terms of some of the other smaller cumulative changes that can add up to a big difference, they talked about how JCPenney, through 2 initiatives last year, were able to raise $51 million for sustainability, all from donations that were under $1. They also talked about something that we'll start to see this summer on e-commerce checkout pages, which is called No Code 2. It'll be a little green button that says, please offset my carbon footprint, and it will simply round your purchase up to the next $1 and donate that to sustainability. And then in terms of resources, the university has put together this database basically of different vendors, factories, suppliers that all provide sustainable options. So it's fairfashioncenter.org if anybody's interested in that. Another really hot topic at South by this year were millennials and Gen Z. These were talks that if you didn't get there early and get a seat, the doors were closed, you were not allowed in, it was full. And so the talk that was probably the most attended was one that the CMO, Anna Filer of Pop Sugar, gave, along with a woman from CNBC, a woman from Lucky Brand Jeans, and Kik. And so just, before we dive into the meat of millennials, just to kind of take a step back, millennials, 18 to 35 years old, right? And if we're starting to think about who she is, and we'll talk about her as a woman, mainly because that's what the panel did, you have to think about how she's at a time in her life where she's buying or renting her first home on her own, right? She's seeking out social experiences to connect with her friends and her romantic interests. She's establishing herself and growing her presence in the working world. Maybe she's having her first kid. And so she's in this period of life where she's embedded with experiences that are unlike any other time of her life, right? And at the same time, she's coming of age as a luxury consumer, right? So the millennial woman today has to make decisions, make changes, create habits that expand her sense of self in this new phase of life that she's in. And as she grapples with kind of all of these decisions, the world as we know it is radically changing because of technology and the impact that technology has on our lives. So women have never had so much freedom, so many choices, but also the resources to kind of make them happen. And so Bruce Sterling pointed out, 30-year-olds today have gone through 2 recessions and an endless war. And when there's any loss of credibility and when there's a degree of chaos in the world, it actually means that for younger generations, there's hope and there's daylight. Because when you're at a time when all of this common wisdom is being demolished, it means that younger people can assert themselves and take command of events. So just to give you a little bit of background on thinking about not millennials as 18 to 35-year-olds, but millennials as people. So there are 2 kind of main themes that stuck out for millennials. One that they want to simplify their lives. They don't want to be weighed down by traditional ownership. So how many people in the room would fall into the millennial category? Okay, that's a lot of you. So of all of you here tonight, how many of you own or are interested in owning a vacation timeshare? No, right? It's obsolete. We don't want vacation timeshares. We want Airbnb. We don't want to own or lease a car. We want to Lyft, Uber, Zipcar to get around. We don't need to go shopping for a washer dryer. We can call a service or send out for someone to wash, dry, fold, and deliver back the same day all of our laundry, right? And so this idea of traditional ownership has really changed. The second is that millennials are really experience seeking instead of being material seeking. And so that's obviously very different for brands today because you're seeing brands have to activate their brick and mortar stores in different ways. So you might see a coffee shop now in an apparel store, and that's kind of normal to us, right? If you look at Urban Outfitters on 34th Street, right, they have a hair salon and coffee and all of these things, Club Monaco and Strand, right? So all of these retailers are looking at finding ways to deliver experiences to people that go beyond just their product assortment and the experience with a sales associate, for example. And so the question kind of came up at South by Southwest, aren't retailers taking their eye off the prize and wasting resources by trying to activate their stores? And if you are a retailer that has a coffee shop, aren't you competing with Starbucks, right? Tom's Shoes has community gardens that people come in and plant, right? So what does that mean for how resources are spent and how brands really look at that consumer experience? And are we getting distracted by trying to provide these experiences that take us away from kind of our core competency, our core product? And the answer to that question at South by Southwest was, of course we're competing with Starbucks, because we're competing with people's time. And millennials today would so much rather, and they're more and more choosing, to go and hear a social entrepreneur speak at a retail store after work than they are choosing to go to happy hour. Gen Z. So Gen Z, 10 to 20-year-olds, obviously they're influenced by the generation that came before them and millennials, but there are differences. So some of those differences are in their attention span, 8 seconds versus 12 seconds for millennials. Gen Z is twice as more likely to shop on mobile than millennials are. They're twice as more likely to use YouTube, and they're much less likely to use Facebook. They're 3 times more likely to open a push notification through a chat message than an email. Gives you an indication of chatbots, right? And the other thing that was kind of fascinating is that the gender binaries are changing. There's a much less rigid definition of what it means to be a boy or a girl for Gen Z. And so if I asked you all to think about being 15 years old, and if somebody asked you the question, how often, what percentage of time do you spend only buying clothes that are designed for your gender? It would be like a confusing, weird question. Like, I don't know, all of the time I buy clothes for my gender? 90%, a lot, right? Today, Gen Z answers that question by saying 44% of the time they're buying clothes designed for their own gender, right? This is now an age group that will come of age and grow up always knowing Zara to have a gender-neutral clothing line. It's really interesting. And on a panel, there was a quote that I'm going to read that was given by Joanne from Lucky Brand. And she said that this has major implications for how retailers measure success. She said, "The way we count our success is in weekly sales meetings with long Excel sheets that are very distinctly separated by gender. We're pushing water uphill with a fork and changing that by casting campaigns that put menswear on women and vice versa. But we have to think about how we're going to trace efficacy if we're blurring genders. In effect, it's about letting the back end of the business catch up with where culture and society are already moving today." So we wanted to touch on some tools, tips, and tricks that were covered at South by Southwest. These are more kind of individual tidbits that we found really interesting rather than core themes that were present throughout the 5 days. So the first was really a new platform that debuted called Dojo Mojo, and it's an email sweepstakes platform. And I know that email sounds like something that's really dusty and doesn't really have a place at something innovative like South by Southwest, but they talked about how if you look at the revenue by channel in the retail industry, and if you look at e-commerce and where the traffic that's converting comes from, the top source of that traffic is always organic. And then the second and the third sources kind of go back and forth. Sometimes it's email and sometimes it's paid search. So even though email might be thought of as a little dusty in this day and age, if you think about the ability to grow traffic and grow conversions, it's something that's really lucrative. And so sometimes at South by Southwest, you're not looking at what the most innovative thing is. You're looking at something that is a practical tool that you can take home to your teams that will actually move the needle forward a little bit. So Dojo Mojo is a sweepstakes email platform that gathers partners who are all looking for other partners to engage in email sweepstakes with. The platform pairs you together and it handles all of the logistics from start to finish. And so what would take a marketer weeks to orchestrate now takes a few hours. And so they have a collection of brands that are of a certain caliber and lifestyle. So some of the partners that are on there include Hearst, Bazaar Voice, Aha Life, The Skim. So it's definitely something that is noteworthy. Here's an example of the Aha Life. I'm sure some of you got this in your inboxes a few weeks ago. Win an escape to Spain through an email sweeps. And changing gears for a second, there was a really fascinating panel on the art of negotiation. And on this panel was Stefan Tornquist from eConsultancy, but they had a hostage negotiator, a sports agent, and a woman that works with celebrities in PR. So she works with P. Diddy and Shaq on kind of crafting their image. And so there were some interesting, very useful takeaways from this talk. One was that when you're in a stressful situation like a negotiation, what happens to people's brains and how they process information is that we slow down, right? The stress slows us down, and we process information at half the speed that we normally do. And so they said, in a situation like that, it means that speaking slowly and pausing actually is really effective and works very well. And so instead of being nervous and trying to fill the silence all the time, that actually embrace that silence and have those pauses, because they actually make for a more constructive negotiation. Another tip that they gave was for the criers in the room, right? So if you're in a situation where you're kind of overcome by stress and your body's natural reaction is to cry, right? This happens to a lot of women, right? And in professional settings, you don't want to cry, but sometimes you just really don't know how to stop it. They talked about how if you try to whistle, right? If you feel like you're going to cry, try to whistle, because physiologically, you can't cry and whistle at the same time. So, I mean, I haven't had a reason to try this in South by Southwest. I don't know if it works firsthand or not, but interesting nonetheless. And then the last tidbit was from Stefan at eConsultancy, and he talked about salary negotiation and how the advice historically has always been that when you are negotiating for more money, you go in with a higher number. And you know in the back of your mind that you're willing to go down from there, but you go in high and solid. And he said that actually now, all of the research is showing that the more prudent advice is to go in and present a range. And it has to be a well-researched range, right? Because if it's the wrong range, then that doesn't do you any service at all. But that presenting a range is better than going in with one high number and negotiating down from there. The other thing we wanted to talk about was dogs at South by Southwest. So everyone talks and thinks about cats and Grumpy Cat at South by, but this year there was actually more dogs than anything else. And so we have a couple examples here, but it even carried through to people brought their dogs in carrying cases to panels. You know, I don't know if there was anyone here that was at South by Southwest, but you know, when you were at a panel, you'd look around and like chances are someone would have their pet with them, which is not something that I've ever noticed before. But some more concrete examples were Mophie had the St. Bernard rescues again this year. So if your battery was dying, you would tweet them with a hashtag. And if you were really lucky, they would send one of these St. Bernard dogs to your rescue with a charger that was stored in this really cute barrel that they wore around their necks. It's adorable. Bark & Co., the founder, was speaking. This is the company that does bark boxes. And in his talk, he discussed how a really important moment for them as a company was to stop thinking about their BarkBox customers as subscribers and instead think of them as dog parents. And so for anyone in the room who has a dog, you're like, of course. And then the top one, which was my personal favorite, was a Japanese startup that is a collar that your dog wears that changes color based on their mood. So we talk about, humanizing technology. We're even humanizing our dogs and the ability to read and understand the type of mood they're in and cater to them accordingly. And the last thing that we wanted to leave you with was the idea of happiness, there were several talks on happiness at South by Southwest this year. And one in particular, called Designing Happiness, was the second most attended talk, second only to Obama, which really tells you something about people's interests and what type of information they're hungry for. So of course they did really cute things that make everyone happy, right? So everyone at this panel left with a cookie. They had golden retriever puppies, these little 5-month-old dogs that you could pet and cuddle with, which makes most people happy. And they talked about happiness in a personal context, but then they also talked about delivering and designing happiness as a brand or as a business. So we'll talk about the personal side of it first. And on a personal level, the discussion really revolved around self-awareness and not needing specific things or specific achievements to feed happiness, but to really be content separate from that. And they spoke about how the habits that we have are so powerful. They're more powerful than we even know. And if we really take a moment to step back and think about our tendencies, our thinking patterns, and our actions, then, and the thinking and the actions that actually shape our lives, so the ones that recur all the time on a daily basis. If we take a moment to really reflect on that, then we can start to see patterns, right? It's illuminating to do that. And if we know those patterns, then we can manage other people and ourselves much better. So they said, your mind is like a car. If you drive it all around town nonstop, then it'll break down. And in order to be happy, we have to take time every day to care for our brains and to disconnect. And so the tool that they kind of offered to do that was meditation. So kind of switching gears on the business side of happiness, it was discussed how some moments of happiness are really spontaneous. They happen serendipitously. It's a natural thing, right? And some of the moments of happiness that we have are carefully designed and crafted by brands. But that doesn't make them any less authentic. It's just kind of another way to experience happiness. And so they kind of said to people, we should all consider ourselves so lucky that there are all of these people in the world that are actively trying to make us happy, even if at the end of the day it's because they want to sell us something. One of the things that I think is a little more practical on this topic is really comes from a concept that Lippincott put forward called their happiness halo. And they said that if you are the designer of an experience, and by the way, everyone is a designer of an experience, because regardless of what department or role you might work in, you have onus over that slice of the customer's experience with your brand. And so if you're a designer of an experience, you should look at that experience as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And how they referred to it was anticipation, interaction, and afterglow. And they likened it to a party, right? And so a huge part of the joy in throwing a party is in the anticipation stage, right? You're thinking about inviting all your friends, you're imagining your loved ones all together in one place, and you're looking forward to all the fun you're going to have, right? Then there's the interaction, right? So of course, when you're in the party, it's fun. It's exciting, it's engaging in how you're interacting with people. There's laughter, there are surprises, there's connections that you're making, right? And then there's the afterglow, which is the memory of that party. The guests, the drinks, the stories, and those memories, that afterglow, has its own happiness that is actually disproportionately powerful because it dominates the scene in our memory and it lives on in the nostalgic conversations we had about remember that party and remember when, but it also lives on in our future perceptions of the future parties that we're going to have. So I'll leave you with that. Hopefully you'll all have an afterglow from the South by Southwest recap. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, but thank you.